One local tax professional tells me that things are a bit trickier for her clients who received those extra unemployment benefits, both suffering devastation on the last day in February, just 5 years apart. And she's still not 100% after dealing with the disease for more than 6 months. Some of this sleet, snow, frozen mixture on top of the ice, if you run through that, you're going to run into some slick spots.
We all have our routine ways of receiving emergency alerts, whether it be via your cell phone, cable box, the internet, or a NOAA weather radio.
Really, the industry is really starting to shift.
But what does it mean for our region? And are electric cars even feasible here? Bierman says the benefits of electrification may actually favor areas like ours.
In a coma for a month, Leslie unknowingly faced her greatest fears, relying on a feeding tube and a ventilator to stay alive.
Saline County farmer Randy Anderson is talking about these grain bins. Most of the flooding has been confined to agricultural land and roads like this one that farmers are still using as a bypass around town to get their grain to the elevators.
They had nets and they formed almost basically like what we know today as a chat room.
You can think of it as the original virtual social network, but over the waves.
I'm currently in Riverside Park in Murfreesboro, and if you know much about Riverside Park, is it sits right next to the Big Muddy River. That's incredible. We're actually going to have more information on one of those local nonprofits, the Southern Illinois Food Pantry Network, coming up later in the show. Back to you guys. And we've got gauges up on some of these poles that are halfway submerged under the river. And of course, they put them there because they expect the river to rise to that level. And on some of these gauges, I'm seeing that we're just under 38 feet. This is the new Mustang Mach-E. It's the new Mustang from Ford, and it doesn't look like much of a Mustang, at least one that you're used to. If you're considering an electric vehicle, but you're still not sure what it's like to live in one every single day, well, stay tuned. We've got more information coming up at 6:30, but for now, I've got somewhere to be. Reporting in the Mach-E, John Ross, News 3. The speed limit here on the side roads is about 45 miles per hour, but that's largely the speed of traffic on the interstate this morning, with a few exceptions. If I crack it for you, you can see it's pretty solid. So imagine this over your road. It's only a couple of seconds without my gloves trying to fiddle with this equipment before I can't feel my hands anymore. So if you've got to get out and you've got to walk somewhere because you're stranded on the side of the road, it's not going to be good. Nick mentioned temperatures down around 20 degrees in some places. Well, that's the temperature at which some of this salt stops to work. A 10% solution only works down to about 20 degrees, and then you've got to use other methods. Of course, four-wheel drive not going to be your savior today. Ice is going to be everyone's enemy across the board. You may be able to get going, but stopping is going to be the hard part. Your pavement may very well be this slick as well, especially here in western Kentucky. Let me show you, the roads today are a little bit slick. They're a little covered. Now, folks in Harrisburg, Illinois, and Perryville, Missouri both know all too well about late winter tornadoes, both suffering devastation on the last day in February, just 5 years apart.
During the pre-dawn hours of February 29, 2012, an EF4 tornado churned through Harrisburg, killing 8 people. Coming during the overnight hours and prior to what many consider to be the beginning of the traditional severe weather season, the storm found residents unaware. Houses destroyed, cars flipped, and people missing. All of it evidence that tornadoes can and do strike our region year-round. More recently, on February 28, 2017, another EF4 tornado roared through Perry County, Missouri, just northwest of Perryville. This, another winter tornado, destroyed 5 homes, injuring 12 and killing 1. The damage then continued for another 50 miles, crossing state lines before relenting just southwest of Christopher, Illinois. Neither of these storms are outliers, even on their own respective days. February 29, 2012 saw a total of 13 tornadoes across Missouri, Illinois, Kentucky, and Indiana. 5 years later, February 28th brought 5 more tornadoes, including 2 long-lived storms to the region. Not only did both tornado outbreaks occur in late winter, they both struck on the last day of February. These storms won't wait until spring to threaten the lives of you and your loved ones, so don't wait to protect them.
It can be a hobby for a lot of people, or it can be a service that people are wanting to contribute towards.
We all have our routine ways of receiving emergency alerts, whether it be via your cell phone, cable box, the internet, or a NOAA weather radio. But in the event of a catastrophe where none of those are options, do you have a way to receive and broadcast communications? If your answer is no, you may want to do what this couple did. Get a ham radio.
It could be something as simple as the power's out, there's the internet's out, which means that the phones are out, whether it's a cell phone or a landline, and you pick it up and you communicate with another ham radio operator, whether it's a family member or not, to let them know that you're okay and that where you are and that you're on your way home or whatever.
Ham radio is short for amateur radio and refers to the type of bands that are available for enthusiasts to communicate on. You have to be licensed to communicate, but anyone can listen. You just have to know how. Even
if you're not going to communicate, just to be able to listen and know how to listen, how to tune into the various frequencies where you can find information about what's going on.
My father was a ham, but he never got a license, so we would only listen.
Amy Mitchell and her husband Ross live in Paducah and recently joined the Massac County Amateur Radio Club.
They had nets and they formed almost basically like what we know today as a chat room.
You can think of it as the original virtual social network, but over the waves.
Everything from their family to their weather to their local neighborhoods.
Of course, it can be a critical means of communication during emergencies.
I decided we needed a way to communicate when the infrastructure went down.
We came from Hurricane Katrina in 2005. We also, 5 years later, suffered the Nashville flood and almost passed away in that flood.
From experience, the Mitchells knew the advantage of having alternative methods of communication.
When my wife and children left 2 days before the storm, I lost all communications with her. The cell phones went down. There was no way to talk to her. So, of course, for me, I just had to put my trust in a higher power and hope for the best.
We thought how valuable ham radio really could have been. And in the Nashville flood, when we almost passed away in the flood, we thought if we had had a ham radio, we would have been able to call for help.
I had my children, I had my animals, and I had her. So I had to ferry across this wide expanse of a rising river a couple of times to get us out of there. And then once we got on the other side to safety, we just sat there. There was nobody there, nobody around, and we were stuck.
In preparation for the next once-in-a-lifetime catastrophe, the Mitchells studied for and attained their licenses.
My wife and I have always been a team, so to speak, and I said, well, let's try to get our ham radio license. And we pursued it. And I'm certainly glad we did. It's been a marvelous experience.
There are times where emergencies do happen. I mean, bad things do happen nowadays, but you definitely need communication.
This is fun in a way. Besides being able to talk to people all over the world, I'm able to save my family and other families. And to me, that gives us a sense of gratification.
Reporting in Metropolis, John Ross, News 3 WSIL.
Good morning, I'm John Ross, flying solo today. Danny has the weekend off. 911 service is still being impacted this morning by a major outage caused by Friday's explosion in Nashville, Tennessee. AT&T customers have not been able to make 911 calls in multiple locations throughout Kentucky. That includes many counties in our area, including McCracken. There are alternate numbers you can call if you are an AT&T customer and need help. We've got information on that on our website, WSILTV.com. The FBI is still searching for clues about the RV that exploded on Christmas morning. Police in Nashville say they had no warning and received no threats prior to the blast, but investigators say it was set off intentionally. 3 people continue to recover from injuries. Investigators are now looking more closely at possible remains found near the scene. As of last night, it was unclear if that tissue was human. You're taking a live look out at Mount Vernon. It's a cold, clear start to the day. Temperatures this morning solidly in the low 20s. We're almost in the upper teens in Mount Vernon. Other places across the region still in the low 20s, below freezing across the region this morning. Another cold start. Our winds out of the southwest, that will continue throughout the rest of the day. And we'll see temperatures back up into the mid to upper 40s by this afternoon. Temperatures will continue to warm. I'll have details on that coming up later in the show. The defense for a Marion woman accused of stabbing an 11-year-old girl to death wants a hearing to help her get out
of jail. 29-year-old Julia Beverly has been in the Williamson County Jail since December 9th on a $2 million bond. In court filings this week, her public defender says she doesn't have a criminal record and has ties to the Williamson County community. Her attorney also says she does not have assets to afford a bond or to flee. Beverly's bond hearing is scheduled for January 8th before Judge Stephen Green. She pleaded not guilty to the murder charges on Wednesday. Meanwhile, investigators are still trying to figure out what caused a Christmas Day fire that destroyed a vacant apartment building in Saline County. It happened just before 10 a.m. Friday in downtown El Dorado. The freezing temperatures made it even harder for firefighters to beat down the fire because dripping water froze to the ground. One firefighter slipped on that ice and suffered a minor injury. A Ziegler House fire victim is not out of the woods but is getting better. Nancy Rady says Alyssa Stark is alert and has been taken off a ventilator. Rady says Stark recognized her mother immediately and wrote a short message on a dry erase board. She wrote, "Love bunches more than y'all know." Stark's family is planning more fundraisers to help with medical care. 3 other people died in that fire last month. The cause is still under investigation. This morning, the COVID relief bill remains unsigned by President Trump, and that means millions of Americans could lose their unemployment today. ABC's Kristen Sloan has more.